Once upon a time, we worked with a client who was a manufacturer, and I'm not going to say what kind of manufacturer in case they guess. It doesn't have a happy ending, this story. They were a manufacturer, and so they had their manufacturing division and their sales and marketing and their installation and other parts of their company, their dealer network. And we worked with just their marketing department. We reported to their director of marketing. And when they started working with us, their main pain was that they were spending too much on pay-per-click campaigns. Great, we'll fix that. We reduced their cost per click. We drove 3 times as many leads with the same kind of spend. You know, all those magical things look great in a case study. But then, as we worked with them more and more, we saw that things weren't quite right. Their reviews were terrible, like just really awful reviews. And this was back when, before Google made you use your real name to leave reviews. So they were like, oh, that's our competition. Like, okay. And one of them was obviously their competition. They left bad reviews for every company in town except for the company they worked at. Okay, legit. But then there was more and more bad reviews, and there were persistent bad reviews, like that person who was so mad that they would write a bad review and then leave it on every possible review site, including ones we didn't even know of until we saw the brand name pop up in our search. Okay, they're really mad. And so we bring this to the marketing department and say, hey, maybe you could fix this. And they'd say, oh, that's installation's problem. It's like, well, it's kind of your problem because we can actually see your conversion rate going down. We can see more searches for your brand name reviews. We can see more searches for your brand name sucks. That's not what we want to have. And they say, no, that's installation's problem. Like, can you please take $1,000 out of your marketing budget and make this right for this other angry person who continues to leave reviews? No, we can't do that either. So it got to the point where we felt gross marketing this company. They had all the right things, right? They had a good reputation, if you hadn't bought their stuff yet. They had a Better Business Bureau logo, you know. They didn't have any outstanding cases. They won Canada's 50 Best Employers to Work At award, which is not really an award you win, it's an award you pay for, but people don't know that. You know, they had all the awards, and they looked reputable. So as marketers, we felt like we couldn't keep marketing this product. It was wrong. And for them, they couldn't get their different departments together to solve the fundamental issues. Their marketing did not match their reality. And this happens a lot in organizations now. You have one person who does your digital marketing, and you have someone else at the radio station who writes your ads and puts them out. And then you have your customer service department, your call center, and they have their own training manuals and training guides and what to say and what not to say. And then you have your social media team who's basically making it up as they go along, right? And I'm sure they're all nice people, but they don't necessarily work in the same department. They may not work at the same company. This could be all outsourced to different agencies. And so they're not working together. And we talk about silos and breaking down the silos, but really, at the end of the day, it isn't just the silos within marketing, it's the silos within your entire organization. And what happens as a result of this is that your brand is broken. Your brand is not delivering the kind of experience that it should. And so we're going to fix that. Your brand is your promise. Your brand says, if you go with us, this is what's going to happen. And different brands have different kinds of promises. You know, if you do marketing for Comcast, you have a difficult job. I think Comcast is basically the only American company I consistently hear bad things about. Like, not even like one good story ever. So, if you're here from Comcast, I'm sorry. That's gotta be a hard job. Please write a memoir. I will read it. But your brand is your promise. Right now, Comcast's promise is, well, you're stuck with us, right? And that's what they're trying for. But if you think about your own brand and what you're promising people, does that promise actually match the reality? And it's more than marketing. It's more than your promoted tweets. It's more than your radio ad. It's more than your billboard. It's how you're greeted when you walk into a store. It's when you call somebody, what does it sound like? Like one of our clients, we called them and I said, put me on hold. I want to hear what it sounds like. And it was fuzzy radio. I'm like, okay, so let's fix that. It's stuff like that. And it's all these different things that come together to make a brand. And so you're probably looking at this right now and saying, Dana, I don't have control over these things. That's ridiculous. But when you're done with a brand strategy, which we're going to walk through today, you should, or you will. So, for example, looking at this list, I'm sure you're adding up in your mind what you actually have control over at your job. Maybe it's one small part of this. Maybe it's several pieces. You think vehicles. I don't have control over vehicles. Maybe I can put a wrap on it, so our logo's on it, and therefore it's branded. But it's not really branded because if I get cut off by your truck on the road, I have now had a bad brand experience. I am mad at you, and I can't call because we have hands-free cell phone laws. So I'm just gonna sit there and seethe at your stupid company and your stupid truck. And I'm gonna feel a little bit less happy if I wanna buy your products and services later. I'm gonna feel a little bit less excited about buying your products. And that is the essence of creating that good brand experience, getting away from the bad things that take away from the brand, and instead building a solid foundation. For example, this is an airline in Canada, WestJet. They do fly to US destinations. If you like to visit Canada, they're very nice. They are very, very friendly. And if you've been in Western Canada, you will know about the friendliness that you experience there. It's like aggressive friendly. Coming from Ontario originally, it took me a little bit to get adjusted to it. I was used to grumpy Toronto, and people were so nice. But for WestJet, they're very family friendly. This is their magic plane. It doesn't just fly to Orlando, it flies around, and if you tweet, hey, I spotted the magic plane, and use the hashtag, apparently they toss you some credits for a flight on WestJet, which is pretty cool. But they do this thing every Christmas, and I don't know how many of you here have seen this. They call it the WestJet Christmas Miracle. And it will make you cry, so don't watch it now, maybe like on your break in the corner so you can weep. One that really stuck with me is there was a flight from Toronto to Calgary, which is about a 4.5 hour flight. And when you were at the gate, there was a little video box, and there's Santa saying, hey, what do you want for Christmas? And you said to Santa what you wanted. Some people said socks, some other people said a TV. The guy who said socks probably regretted it. And then the plane takes off. They're like, oh, WestJet, they're so cute. They asked me what I wanted for Christmas. They get to Calgary, they get off the plane, and instead of luggage, out comes their presents. In the 4 hours the plane was in the air, WestJet employees went and bought everything on that list. And there's crying, there's more crying, and instead of spending money on a TV campaign, they did this. And it was a beautiful execution of a digital-first campaign. It was on YouTube, sponsored social, didn't worry about offline. It happened because it was that amazing. It went around the world. You may have seen it. It was all over BuzzFeed for a couple of days. But then, Michaela, our account manager at Kickpoint, took a flight with WestJet. And one of the things that they do, part of their brand, is they tell funny jokes. And by funny I mean like dad jokes, like puns and stuff, after you land and while you're taxiing, because that's really the most boring part of the flight. Everybody gets antsy, so they tell bad jokes. And usually they're like cheesy, like what's brown and sticky? A stick, ha ha. You're like, oh. But you're a little bit delirious because you've just been on a plane for 4 hours, so it's hilarious. And this one time when Michaela took the flight attendant told a really inappropriate, sexist joke. And half the plane laughed and half the plane went, ugh. And those people felt a little bit less great about WestJet. Humans like consistency. We like things to be the same. We like to have expectations. Consistency is why brand restaurants exist. I've stayed at the Hyatt Olive 8 3 times for this conference. We've stayed in 3 different rooms, I'm sure. They look the same. Like it could be the same room for all I know. And it's cool because when I get there, I know what I'm gonna picture. We like consistency. I had to return something from Lenovo. I bought the wrong kind of plug. And Anthony, my friend Anthony, I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and then he popped on chat. He says, "Hey Dana," 3 exclamation marks. "Happy hump day," 3 exclamation marks. And then, "Thank you for contacting Lenovo's post-sale customer service chat located at our global headquarters in North Carolina. My name is Anthony. How may I provide you with extremely satisfying customer service today?" I'm pretty sure the first 2 lines were actually Anthony, and the 3rd line was not. So am I talking to a human or I'm talking to a robot, or maybe it's like Skynet, right? Like, is it the Lenovo cyborg who's now doing support? It felt weird, and it was like this throughout the entire chat. I was sending screenshots and sending it around the office, because it was crazy that he felt that he could say happy hump day, which is funny, but come on. And then they got this like Lenovo script. Again, brand inconsistency. And good marketing feels right. Good marketing makes someone say, "Oh, I don't believe in advertising," while they choose Coke versus Pepsi. Good marketing makes people make decisions that they're unconscious of. And every time you interrupt, every time there's a bad brand experience, you're making people think. We do not want people to think. And this is why we need brand strategy. And this is why digital marketers are uniquely equipped to lead brand strategy. When I talk to people about brand strategy, in fact, I was talking to someone this morning while we were walking here, and I was talking about what I'm going to talk about today. And he said, "Yeah, I see that all the time in our locations and how people are greeted and all this other stuff. I see the connections." And if you're used to working in one little silo, like say radio or billboard or some offline traditional channels, you don't necessarily think of all the different connections that go into that final product. But digital marketers do. All of us in this room are able to understand brand in a totally new way. So I think that we are all very well equipped to go for the future of marketing. Rand just talked about this. Lots of different speakers today are going to talk about this. This is where marketing is going. The brand that manages to get their stuff together and provide a consistent brand experience is going to win over their competition, hands down. So let's get started. I would like you to picture a brand continuum. At one end, we have Dove. Now, when I say Dove, I'm sure you think of something, women wearing white, people looking in a mirror and crying, some sort of like sketch, maybe the parody that they did. And when you think of Protein World, I imagine you probably think of something a little bit different. Now, Protein World, I don't know how many people know about these ads. They ran an ad campaign in the UK, a little bit in New York, and it was a picture of a woman wearing a tiny bikini, and it said, "Are you beach body ready?" Like, I am not beach body ready, according to Protein World, and I'm okay with that. I also don't use Dove, I'm somewhere in the middle. So, Dove and Protein World have 2 very different brand statements. This is Protein World's. When you read this, there's some words that really stick out. Revolution is one of them. It's a very aggressive word, right? Healthier, leaner, fitter, stronger. Sounds like a Daft Punk song. This is their brand statement. And then this is Dove's, and this is just a portion of Dove's. Dove's is exceptionally long, and I decided not to give Erica hives and just take a portion of it. But, confidence, not anxiety, positive relationship, self-esteem, full potential. And if you put these together, you can see that at their heart, they're really saying the same thing. It's all about self-improvement. It's about making yourself better one way or the other. Protein Worlds is, you gotta look good in that bikini. And Dove is, you are awesome just the way you are, but they're still self-improvement at their heart. Their brand strategy is how they execute on that message of self-improvement in very, very different ways. So when you go back and you start thinking about your brand strategy, I encourage you to start with your core values. Maybe you have a mission statement. Maybe you have none of these things. Maybe your mission statement says things like world class or synergies or doesn't really say anything at all. But it's a place to start. Kickpoint's core value is we help you do better. That could be applied to almost anything. We apply it to marketing. So write down those core values. I'm sure there exists somewhere, maybe in a dusty document drawer somewhere, but start with that. And imagine your company as a person. Now, marketing agencies, I want to say to you, you have to take the good and the bad. So your persona is not Don Draper, because you can't have the whiskey without the sexism. It's very specific. And I see a lot of agencies who are like, oh yeah, if our brand's a person, it's totally Don Draper. Peggy, I can get that. Don Draper? Eh. But think about how you would express your brand as a human being. And humans are flawed. No human is perfect. There are things that make your brand good, and there are things that make your brand bad. And you have to be really honest about both of these things. Don't just gloss over the bad attributes. This is like therapy for your brand. You're going to talk about it, we're going to cry, there'll be some hugging, and then we're going to move on. And really, I think one of the most perfect expressions of brand as a person is Roger. If I went around to this audience today and I asked 100 of you, tell me Moz's core values, you would know. There's a reason why you're here and you're excited for this. And it's their core values, the tag fee code. They're the givingness that they have for the community, right? So if I went to your company and I asked 100 people what your company stood for, would I get one answer or would I get 100 different answers? That's a good sign that you need to start to build your brand strategy. So we're gonna go through step by step how to make this happen. So step one is, why did this fail before? If you're at a sufficiently large company, somebody has tried to do this, and they failed, and you want to know why, so you can avoid the same fate. Think of it like Indiana Jones when he's looking for the Holy Grail. And he goes into that room, I'm sure most of you have seen this movie, and he goes into the room with all the different cups, and he has to pick the Holy Grail, and the old knight is there and says, choose wisely, right? And so he goes through the process and he picks, but instead of picking a Holy Grail, wouldn't that be easy? Here's our brand strategy. Instead, you're gonna be a forensic analyst and figure out why everyone else died. And write it down and be really honest as to why it died. Dust off those biz school books and do a SWOT analysis and figure out what is gonna cause havoc for this brand strategy. And at this point, I strongly recommend getting the C-level on board. There's a couple different tactics for that, depending upon how big your company is. If you're a very small company, then it may be very difficult because maybe the founder is maybe a little too involved, and you need to get them to step back. So I have a cautionary tale that you can feel free to share. Someone we know back home is a personal trainer, and he's building a company. But he has problems because he is the brand on social media, and they get a lot of their business from social media. And so everybody says, oh, I only want to work with that guy, the founder. I don't want to work with anybody else. And so they hire other personal trainers, but it's almost impossible for people to come in via social and say, well, I know you on social, but I guess I'll work out with this guy. They're not excited about it. They don't stay. And so he has to let go of his social media and hand it off, but it's almost been too long now. It's almost been to the point where it's going to be really difficult to step back as that brand. As a small business, until you have a brand strategy, until you have a brand voice, you, whoever is the most prominent person at the company, will be that brand, no matter what you do. So building that brand needs to be something that supersedes that person. I think Moz went through the same thing here, actually, when one of the goals, I remember Jen Lopez shared a slide, and one of their goals in social media was to beat Rand on Twitter with followers. Yeah. And that was a really important goal for them, because Rand has such a strong voice, and Moz had to be its own brand past that. So that's one way for the C-level if you're a small company. If you're a bigger company, tell them about how much money you're going to save by having less angry customers. You can take the same budget, don't say less, because then they'll cut your budget. You can take the same marketing budget and do more with it, because you're going to be building more brand advocates. You're going to be building more happier customers. And you're also going to be eliminating something that we like to call marketing debt. If you don't stand for anything at all, if you're like, if I say to you, who's your target market? You say, everybody. Babies, really? Your target market is babies? No, it's not. Then you say to them, we need to make sure that we stand for something, because what's happening is we're getting people who are tire kickers. We're getting people who are inappropriate customers. We're getting people who expect things that we are not comfortable delivering. And we want to eliminate that marketing debt. That is time your sales team or you, whoever handles new leads, is wasting as a result of inaccurately targeted marketing. And building a brand strategy is going to make that happen. It's a pretty powerful argument for the C-level. Do more with less, save time across the board. They like that sort of thing. So hopefully now you've got them on board. Now you need to think about the brand is and what the brand is not. And I want to show you an example to illustrate this. Erica from Moz has a great post on the Salesforce blog about building brand voice and tone, and I'm sure someone will tweet that out for you so you have that. But this is for a wedding invitation company. So they have the brand is romantic and airy. In the near future, the brand may be elegant and elite. The brand is not cheap or tacky. So to get to this brand is, and the brand is not statements, I recommend a card sorting exercise. And if you haven't done this before, you get a whole bunch of cards with things written on them, and then you lock someone in a room until they can sort down the cards to what you need them to sort it down to. And maybe don't feed them until they do it either. And don't let them get away with any of this, oh, I can't decide between these two things. No. No, you need 2 is, 2 in the future, and 2 is not. That's it. 2, not 6, not 3, not, oh, I can't decide, 2. And I also recommend a couple of things when you're setting up this exercise. Write about 40 or so words down, but tailor them to your company. If you make industrial, I don't know, pile driving machines, for example, you're not going to write romantic and airy as 2 of your brand attributes, I think. If you do, you have a very specific segment. Well done. But make them specific to your organization, but try not to influence the process, especially if you're an agency, because you do not work there, they work there, they know the brand better than you. Your goal is to learn, draw it from them, and then express it back to them. That's what they're paying you for, not necessarily for you to say, well, I like this, so unless you're their target market, don't do that. So write down these 40 or so words on cards. Start with the brand is not. It's a lot easier for people to say, oh, I don't like that, or I don't like this, than I do like this. Think about when clients see design pieces, right? They don't start with, oh, I really like this. They're like, I don't like this color of blue. That's the feedback. It's not necessarily good feedback, it's frustrating feedback, but it's feedback. So start with the brand is not. Then work with the brand is, and then in the near future. I also recommend don't do it focus group style, where you have a bunch of people in a room, because there's always going to be one loud person who's going to end up overruling everybody else. Try to do it one-on-one as much as possible, so that you are getting the real, unfiltered feedback. And as a result of this, you're going to get some really interesting answers, and you're actually going to be able to see where the problem areas might be once you push out the brand strategy. If 20 people say this, and then 5 people in this other department say something completely different, you're going to have a bad time. You know this now, so you can prepare for it and add it to your SWOT analysis. And the next step is defining voice and tone. And lots of people have talked about this in depth. Lots of companies have their brand voice and tone out there. MailChimp has a good one that's publicly available. Buffer, who makes everything public, has it available out there. I recommend reading those over. But I also encourage you strongly, brand strategy is more than just voice. And a lot of companies get to voice and then they stop. They say, okay, we're good. Because voice is something tangible. It's easy to grab onto and say, well, this is not what the brand would say, or this is what the brand would say. And what happens is that you have your marketing department speaking one way because they're all really excited about this brand voice, and then you have the people answering the phone still going back to the old way of doing things. And it's an incomplete implementation, and then they're like, this brand strategy stuff doesn't work. Never mind, we're never doing that again. And then you go and join the dusty skeletons in the room with all the holy grails. Make sure that your brand strategy transcends just your brand voice. So all that being said, this is an example that we did for a client of ours. They're called Industry Mailout. They're based in Edmonton. And they do email marketing, which, as you can imagine, is a very crowded field. So they have some things that make them stand out. And what we're working with them on is to help express those values. And so in our brand voice document, we have write like this, not like this, and why. This is real examples, a real screenshot from our document. Please don't only include the bad examples in the document. It can be really demoralizing. Everything you do is bad, and I am here to fix it. You are not the brand police. You are a brand coach. So encourage them to write different ways. Show them why. Explain it in depth. Provide really good reasons for why you're asking them to change things, or if they did something good, reinforce the good things. I included one of the examples where what they wrote was not like this, but in our document we do have examples where write like this, and then we had to come up with something bad as an example of how not to write to balance it out. And at this point, it's a really good idea to get human resources on board. They're going to be a really good ally in this if you're a large enough organization that has a human resources person or department, because they make the hiring decisions that bring in the people who are going to be implementing this brand strategy. And one of the interesting things that a well-defined brand strategy does for your organization is it defines culture fit. If you interview someone and you say, hey, can you write a blog post about why accounting is awesome? 300 words. Don't worry about spelling or grammar, just we want to see a sample of your writing. And you read this and you think, wow, this really aligns well with our brand. That's a good hire. You don't even necessarily need to provide them with the brand voice ahead of time. In fact, sometimes you shouldn't, just to see the kinds of information that they come back to you with. And also, as you go through this process, you're going to have some people who are going to say, this is dumb and I refuse to do it, and you're going to need HR as an ally at that point to help you solve these things. Because if you're at a big enough company, there's going to be some people who are not going to want to make this happen. I also encourage you to keep it really simple. Your brand strategy is not a 50-page document. It's a business card. It's something that I could explain to you in less than a minute. It's something that you could tell me about, that elevator speech, that 15-second elevator speech to tell you to do when you start your own business. That's how your brand strategy should be expressed. So, are there any German speakers here? Okay, my German accent is apparently awful. I went through Google and I tried to get it to figure, I couldn't figure out how to say this, so, but you would know what this is saying. So pretend that I just said this in German. I'm not going to. It's seriously, it was like half an hour at my house, and then my wife said, no, stop. You're so bad. This is I'm Lovin' It from McDonald's. And I'm loving it if you're not familiar with the campaign. I mean, you're familiar with the campaign, but you may not be familiar with how it started. Started as a German campaign made by their German advertising agency. And it was so good and so successful that they put it around the world. It's been translated into tons of different languages, and it has the same core message regardless of where you are. And they use I'm Lovin' It, which is arguably their most successful advertising campaign ever. It's been their longest running, even better than the Big Mac song. They've been using it for years, and they use it for hiring people. You're gonna love your job, I'm loving it. They use it for people who are excited about their food. And if you see the commercials and you hear the little ditty that they do, and you immediately think, ugh, McDonald's, you're not their target market. And that's okay. Although sometimes they do sell, like I drove past one yesterday and they're like, salads. I'm like, no, that's not why people go to McDonald's, salads. One thing that's been really interesting about the I'm Loving It campaign is that McDonald's in North America are actually doing quite poorly. McDonald's overseas are doing very, very well because of the different ways in they express the brand. And so I would encourage you at this point, if you have international locations, take that brand voice and take that brand strategy, translate it, get someone who actually speaks the language to do this, not like Google Translate, and get international on board. Read it to them, and if it doesn't make sense in their language, if you're using words that don't translate well, and this often happens when you're thinking of things that like translate from German to English, usually you can figure out English into some other language. But if it doesn't make sense to them, then you're gonna have a difficult time selling this brand strategy around the world. Your brand strategy should be so simple where people see it and say, oh yeah, I get that. Will you help you do better? Okay, I feel like that's a thing I can get behind. I'm loving it. Yes, that's a thing I can get behind. International locations will help you get there. And so now that you've got all this stuff together, you've got your brand voice, you're starting to build what this means for your brand strategy. How do you sell it to everybody else at the company? I would encourage you to show the dream. So this is a dream if you're a cell phone company. We start with Jess, Lock Jess Monster on Twitter. I don't know if that Twitter handle is available, but feel free to grab it if it isn't. Asking her friend Elle, do you like Breeze Mobile? I'm thinking about switching to them. And hopefully your social media department is monitoring non-at mentions of your brand. There was a great study done that said that most brands completely miss those mentions. Please don't. Hopefully, your brand communicated back to them and your social media team knew exactly what to say because brand voice, like this, not like this. They didn't spend time thinking about whether or not they should reply. They didn't spend time thinking about what to say. They knew what to say and they were able to say it. And then she did some Googling. She checked out the website. Breeze.ca is not a real website, please don't go there. We couldn't get it, unfortunately. Your meta descriptions, your title tags, are another great place to put in that brand. Your PPC ads. I can't even tell you how many PPC ads I see that say the same boring dreck as everybody else. And this is a massive opportunity to stand out with your brand. When I was at SearchLove in Boston, I talked very deeply about PPC ads. And one of the examples I gave was car insurance companies. And I said, here's 3 ads, TV ads from car insurance companies. It's like, okay, everybody knows the Geico, Gecko. Everybody knows Flo from Progressive. On the East Coast, they have a brand called MapFree or something like that, and everybody knew what their ads looked like. Great. Here's 3 PPC ads. Match them up with the brand. Nope. I think maybe 1 or 2 people got it, but it was kind of like they were guessing. Because they all said the same thing. Save money on car insurance. My goodness, what a unique concept. I've never heard of that in the industry before. I think everybody says you can save money on car insurance. What are you going to do to stand out? So think about that in your marketing and how you express yourself. Why does your brand get tossed aside when it comes to things like paid verticals? It's okay if your click-through rate is a little bit lower. This is a radical idea. It's okay if your click-through rate is a little bit lower because the customers that you get are going to be the ones that you want. I care less about the click-through rate on an ad than I do about the conversion rate on the landing page. I care less about the conversion rate on the landing page than I do on the conversion rate from the lead to the sale. That's really the most important metric. Don't waste your salespeople's time. Get them just the leads that they want. So Jess is now driving to the store. Hopefully the social media people said, hey, where's your nearest store? Great. Greg is going to be there between 4 to 9 today. Make sure to say hi to him when you get there. This billboard matches all the other advertising that she's seen. There's no weird differences. There's no special that she didn't see on the website. Maybe it's got a nice trackable phone number. Maybe it's got a trackable URL. The billboard matches everything else that's happening. And now she's at the kiosk with her giant sack of money and is ready to switch. And at this point, how was she greeted? Do the in-store displays match everything else that has led her up to this point? Is Greg behind the counter saying, oh yeah, hey, yeah, I heard from our social media team you're gonna be coming in and you've got an iPhone 6 and here's what we can do to switch you over to our service and here's how long it's gonna take for your phone number and all that stuff. Like that's not an impossible dream. We have the technology, we can build it. It's just something that doesn't necessarily happen. And if that happens, people are gonna think that's amazing. It's not impossible, it's just hard. And I think that with a brand strategy, you can achieve these connections. And then after, she's so happy, she's switched over her phone. She actually ended up getting a 6 Plus because she felt the 6 wasn't enough like a tablet to hold up to your face. I have a Moto X, so I make fun of iPhones all the time. Then she got her email afterwards, and the email also matched all of the brand touch points that have happened up to this point. It wasn't one of those, dear customer, we understand you've had a recent experience with us at Breeze Mobile. Please fill out the survey for a chance to win a gift card. Do the people actually win those gift cards? Like, is it like Publishers Clearinghouse? I always wondered, and I fill them out. I've been with my same cell phone provider for, I think, 18 years now, and I've always filled them out, and I've never won a gift card. Like, just come on, guys. When I get to 20 years, maybe like balloons will fall from the ceiling or something, I'm hopeful. But these emails also need to match. That post-purchase experience is, I would argue, even more important than the pre-purchase experience. Customer loyalty is not just lip service, and it's also a two-way street. A lot of companies expect customers to be loyal to them, but they are not loyal to their customers. Cell phone companies aren't particularly bad at this. There's always deals for new consumers, but not a deal if I've been with you for 18 years and I'm renewing my cell phone. Why should I stick with you? You give me no reason to. Customer loyalty has to go both ways. So you bring all these pieces together and you say, this is the kind of brand experience that's going to make things less expensive for us. It's going to increase customer retention. It's going to increase positive word of mouth. It's going to increase our net promoter score, all those great metrics that people in the C-level like to see. A properly executed brand strategy makes all this happen. And at this point, you can say, okay, we're going to get service on board because you're able to show them how much better it is when people come in and they're not pissed off all the time. When people come in, they're like, yeah, your social media person was so nice. I'm really excited to give you a whole bunch of money and help you meet your quota, right? You have less angry phone calls. You have people dealing with stuff in a more proactive way. Going back to WestJet, they've had a really difficult time lately on social media. They're actually, I feel like they're providing a master class in crisis management on social media because 5 of their planes 2 weeks ago had bomb threats called in, and every one of them had to be grounded. No idea who's doing it. The Mounties are on the case. It's a very Canadian thing to say, isn't it? I feel like a moose should come out now, right? But they have been handling it on social media so well, and it's all in their brand voice. And they haven't just, because their brand voice is helpful, their brand voice hasn't just been like, hey, look, guy who just lost your luggage, we're busy over here dealing with a bomb threat, so we can't help you right now. No, they've been helping everybody. It's amazing. I do recommend you check out their Twitter, scroll back a little bit, you'll see how proactive and on they are. And when Michaela told them about the sexist joke, they were really sorry. And, they do follow up. They do fix things. And that's what makes a difference. If you screw up, you do have to apologize. But getting service on board and saying, like, look, you're going to know when you're doing things right and you're doing things wrong. You will have that consistency, not just with consumers, but within your own organization. And then when you look back at this brand document again, now you can start to see how all these things start to come together a little more clearly for you. How you can figure out how your out-of-home affects your social network, how your signage and your apps work together, and what you can do to influence all of those things in your organization. Go beyond a document. Do not let your brand strategy languish as a 50-page PDF in your intranet. It's a living, breathing document that is the true expression of your company out there in the world. And always be coaching. Don't think, okay, I've coached everybody, why aren't you following the brand voice? No, it's a constant, ongoing process. And remember, brand coach, not brand police. You don't want to be the soup Nazi when it comes to the brand. No brand for you, right? You want to help people. Because the only way you're going to get people excited about this, the only way you're going to get cheerleaders, is if you help them do better. If you encourage them to be consistent with the brand voice. If they start to feel it, this is cheesy, but feel it in their heart. That's a good brand voice. And if you do all these things, and you bring your brand voice completely together, you will feel that every decision that you make, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's service, everything will drive forward together with purpose. And at Kickpoint, our brand is called Lady KP. You can imagine why. And we ask ourselves, would Lady KP say this? Would Lady KP tweet this? I am actually quite terrible at writing as Lady KP. And my business partner, Jen, we co-own Kickpoint together. She is much better at it than I am, so I'll send her things and say, please teach me how to do this, because I can't get Lady KP's voice, but I'm working on it. And that coaching is really important. And it's something that it's okay if you don't get it the first time. It's something that you're going to work towards. And if you do every brand interaction thinking about that brand voice, thinking about that brand strategy, thinking about the ultimate purpose of this, every decision that you make will drive your company forward with purpose, not confusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So I was sitting there thinking about this, because we've all worked with companies, and they seem kind of valueless, and you go in and you try to, what is your value? And you touch on this a little bit, and they say, our value is to work hard and make money. And
I hope that's most companies' values, right? Like that's the surface of existing, continuing to exist as a corporation, is working hard and making money. Otherwise, well, making money part, maybe you're a charity. They still have to make money. So I think you have to, kind of push past that. And if they don't, and I mean, as an agency, it's really hard to say no to people, but sometimes there are some lost causes. And if you work at one, I'm sorry, that just, they're just not going to get there. Even Comcast, bless their terrible service little hearts, they have service standards that they try to achieve, as terrible as they are. They do have something that they stand for other than making money.
But making money, that's awesome though. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple questions, and you can submit these on the hashtag MozCon QA. You talked about a process of putting things on cards. Where do you get the 40 words to put on those cards?
There's a lot of, I can tweet out a link later, but there's a lot of good prompts for writers, actually, when you're developing characters. There's these great lists of words of different attributes that your character can have. In stories and novels. And so you can go through that list. There's like 200 or so words. That's a good start. I'll tweet out some examples as well, but that's a good way to start. And if you ask people around the company too, before you start the card sorting process, that can kind of seed where you're going to go with that.
Okay, final question. Evan Davis asks, why was Arby's so low on your chart? They have the meats. What's the digs on Arby's?
Okay, I personally love Arby's. Often when we drive by an Arby's, I have to stop, and my wife hates it. She thinks it's disgusting, so I just get my own little roast beef burger and have it in peace. And there's like 2 Arby's left in Edmonton, so I have to be very specific. Oh, we're just going to go down this way. It's a shortcut, and drive past the Arby's. Our art director made the brand continuum, and I saw where she put Arby's, and I laughed because she knows that I love Arby's, and I just left it. So that's why. But Arby's, roast beef, protein world. And I wouldn't say, too, I imagine, I wouldn't put the protein world necessarily as the low end of the continuum and Dove as the high end. They're just different.
All right, let's give a hand for Dina DiTomaso, everyone.
Thank you.
You did an awesome job.
Thank you.